Hey everyone, welcome to episode 74 of the Team House. I'm Jack Murphy, here with co-host Dave Park. This is a little bit of a different episode. We normally live stream. This one is pre-recorded since it falls on Christmas Eve, and all three of us have other things to be doing on that particular evening. But we wanted to be committed to getting out an episode this Friday for you nonetheless, so we are pre-recording this one with our guest here, Greg Coker. Dave, you actually read Greg's book.
Yes, it was a phenomenal book. So the book is Death Waits in the Darkness, right? It's Six Guns Don't Miss.
Correct.
And when you say six guns don't miss, what is a six gun, Greg?
Well, there's a bit of a story about the six guns, and I was in B Company, 1st of 160th. There's A, B, Charlie Delta in 1st Battalion. Well, back when they had reconfigured after the desert mishap in 1980, and the 160th was formed, and they were training to go back with all Army helicopter pilots and gun pilots. The gun guys were flying AHs. They were in the desert, pardon me, and a couple of AHs landed, and Colonel Beckwith was standing there. Well, we carried two miniguns, one on each side of the aircraft. And Colonel Beckwith, the pilots got out, and they were all dusty and dirty, and he says, "Man, you guys look like old gunfighters from the Old West. So from now on, you're going to be known as the six guns," just like the two pistols that they carried back in the gunfighter days.
Right. It was six chambers, and the Little Birds have their guns
Six
have
barrels.
Six, yeah.
Oh, really?
6 barrels.
Yeah, 6 barrels. So, Greg,
Yep.
Well, I to put it very mildly, you were a pilot with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, and that's the small of it. But, Greg, before we get into all of that, something you may not know about Jack and I is we are big comic book geeks. And to us, you are the real life heroes. Like, you are the superheroes. And so every hero has an origin story. And we would love to hear your origin story. Who were you growing up? What drew you to the military? Just anything that you want to share with us.
Sure. Yeah, I think we all have a story, and it's pretty interesting in our organizations, and specifically Army Special Operations, and I always said that, somebody should study this, because you have all these men from all over the country that come to one very small, very specialized unit. And it interested me as to, okay, why did we all, this is where God put us. That's why. And, I tell everybody, and I talk to guys later, it just hit me like a rock one day that, this is God's path for every man here. And when we are being knitted in our mother's womb, it says in the Bible that our path is laid out, and that is one of a warrior's path. And that's how these warriors come together. Grew up, just like pretty much everybody else, chasing critters in the woods. And I worked on my uncle's farm and ranch and cowboyed and rode horses and, of course, hunted and fished. And I was a child of the 60s, so to speak, and the Vietnam War was going on at that time. My father was in the military. He retired after 30 years. But, that was the television war, and I can remember that was also the helicopter war. So I always had this inspiration or calling to fly helicopters. I mean, I wanted to be in the military and be in the Army. And again, that was my calling to go forth and do. So,
and so that was your path. Now, did you go into the Army as a pilot? Was there a pilot program at the time? Did you go in enlisted? How did that work?
Yeah, good question. At the time, for a very long time, the Army has had from high school to flight school. for the warrant officer program for the United States Army to fly helicopters. And I went in, I enlisted first. And my father, told me, hey, this is probably the best path for you. This is what I recommend. So I enlisted, and I was in the 101st and the 327th Infantry there at Fort Campbell, Kentucky for almost 3 years when I applied for flight school. And I had our brigade commander was Colonel Ralph Hagler. You may remember that name. And so he was he was a very integral part in helping my path. I looked at going to 275 Rangers because Colonel Hagler had been the 275 commander when they jumped into Grenada. So he was pulling me kind of that way.
Yeah.
But he knew I really, really wanted to fly. So that's what I did. I got accepted to flight school.
Okay.
And
how long was flight school for a warrant? I mean, I'm sure it's probably the same for an officer, but when you go into flight school and it's helicopters, like how long is it and what's the basic course there?
Yes, sir. There are 3 tracks back then in 1989, 1990. There was a scout track, so those guys flew 58s. Then there was the lift track, so they were Hueys. Black Hawk was coming on, it was online, and then Chinooks. And then there was the gun track. Well, I wanted to be a gun guy. I like shooting stuff and blowing shit up, so that was just a natural fit for me. And I tracked into Cobras. During flight school for the gun guys, we had the longest period. It was exactly 1 year from the day I started to the day I graduated and left. It was a little bit shorter for the lift guys because they don't have to learn ballistics and shooting and range operations and things like that.
And so you went through flight school for the gunships, and then where did you go from there? What was your first duty station?
My first duty station was in South Korea in the 517 Cav, and we were the furthest deployed aviation unit and mech unit. And we were right up by the border, and that was our mission, was to fly the 37th parallel, I believe, the North-South Korean border. And yeah, it was a really good tour for a brand new junior aviator. And we flew mountains. Of course, it snowed, so we got cold weather ops, we got overwater ops, and flew a lot of night vision goggles. And we had a real world mission then. So yeah, it was pretty serious, and it was a good tour for a young gun pilot.
Yeah. Now, were you aware of the 160th at that point in time? When did that come?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I can recall, and I'd see the little loaches. Now I was at Campbell, and we had just come out of the field, 327th. We just come out of the field one time, and we were sitting back there. I was cleaning weapons or doing whatever, and these 4 little birds fly by. The route was right there by our, where our headquarters was, and I said, "Hey, check out those little black helicopters." And old platoon sergeant looked over at me. He's like, "Shut up! Those don't exist," And I was like, well, I said, "I think I'm going to fly one day." He's like, "Shut up, Coker. Go back to work. You're too stupid," or something like that. I wish I could remember his name and find him now.
Yeah. Huh? So for our viewers, most of our viewers are aware of the different types of platforms, but for our viewers who are not, can you describe what a little bird is? Because it's very unique.
Yeah. I'd be very interested to hear from an actual little bird pilot, like here's your little bird familiarization class. Yes,
sir. Yeah, good. And people get confused because I say, well, I flew little birds, and they're like, oh, the 0858. I'm like, no, I don't know what that is, but it's a civilian helicopter. And it grew out of the old Hughes McDonnell Douglas Loach, the 086 from the Vietnam era. And great helicopters. And of course, they have their history flying in Vietnam, and that's what the unit, when they first formed in 81, that's what they selected. Some of the guys were still Vietnam guys around, flying Army helicopters. And a lot of everybody came out of the 101st and very aviation heavy at the time. just great pilots and leaders and commanders. But what it is today, it is a civilian MD-530 helicopter. And we buy them from, I think it's Boeing, Hughes, McDonnell Douglas, whoever owns them now. But yeah, it's Mr. Hughes engineered, developed, put that helicopter together, and he wanted a survivable airframe, and that's where it got its egg shape from, is what we call it, the egg.
Yes,
he knocked the tail boom off. Yeah. It looks like an egg.
Yeah.
So, and then the way it's engineered, the different areas of airframe in it, and it forms a protective capsule around the pilots if it rolls. And I'm here today to tell you that it works.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about it later.
We definitely will. Yeah, and I mean, so when they say a little bird, it really is little. Like people who haven't seen it before, there's room for the pilots and room for your ammo, and pretty much that's it.
That's it, right? And there's another version in a company, 160th, the MH6s. The MH, they're mission helicopters. They have the planks on the side. Our customers, get on the sides of them. They can take 3 on each side, and then a dog, or something that they need for the mission, and that's how those are configured. So there's 2 Little Bird companies in the 160th, and they're at Fort Campbell.
Yeah.
And you were on one of the gun platforms. Could you talk about the armaments that can be loaded up on one of these aircraft?
Sure. And kind of back to where the aircraft comes from, they purchase them commercially, and then they go up to Bluegrass, Kentucky, and they get reconfigured with mill standard radios, our armament systems, and now I flew the J model, now we have the M model, and the difference is the J had a 5-bladed rotor system, the M has a 6-bladed rotor system, and a 4-bladed tail rotor system, which gives us more lift. So we can carry more ammo and gas or people. So it was and we have a glass cockpit. So the aircraft have really been upgraded a bunch since I've left. But I did fly the M on a couple of tours before I retired. Armament wise, they get an armament system put in them, and then our standard configuration are dual Dillon M134 miniguns. They fire 4,000 rounds per minute each, and then 2 7-shot rocket pods. And we generally carry 10 or 17-pound Mark 66 rockets. That's our standard configuration. So that's about 132 bullets a second when you pull the trigger. 7.62.
And we'll get into all the advanced technology that you guys use for as we get into it. So tell us about applying to the one. Did you just do the one duty station, or did you do another sort of conventional side and then go to 160th, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, when I got back from flying Cobras, I had tracked into Apaches and went right just as Desert Storm was starting is when I got home. So I hauled tail to Fort Rucker and started to go through the Apache transition because I thought, there was going to be a need for Apache pilots. And I was assigned to the 101st. And then, the thing was over in 6-7 days. So they kind of throttled back, regrouped, and they had a short course for us that was there. Then we went back to the standard, and I flew AH-64s, the 1st and 101st. At the time, Lieutenant Colonel Cody was commander, later to become General Cody. And, I was there for about 2.5 years, and then I assessed for the 160th in 93.
What's the difference, or the primary difference, for whether it's the mission or the setup between a Cobra and an Apache?
Well, the Cobra it's an older airframe. It's 60s technology. It's single engine, has a 20 millimeter cannon on the nose, and it carried tow missiles and then 2 19-shot rocket pods. The Apache, of course, was advanced technology. It's 2 engines, 30 millimeter chain gun, still 2 19-shot rocket pods, Hellfire missiles. So those were the big changes. Both are great helicopters, and folks that fly them are, yeah, they're awesome gun pilots. So talked to some ground forces that have worked with them.
Yeah. So what was the process then for applying to the 160th, and how did that go for you?
It's pretty much your resume for what you've done up until that point. And I was somewhat of a junior aviator. I was a pretty young W-2, and at the time the standards to apply to the unit was 1,000 hours of flight time and 100 hours of goggles. I only had I think 600 maybe 50 hours of flight time, but I had over 200 hours of night vision goggles. As we flew NVGs a bunch in Korea, and then we flew them a bunch in the 101st. So, I think they weighed it, and I had a couple good friends of mine there at the unit and B company. And, so, yeah, I sent them my packet, my resume, so to speak, and they look at your flight time, what you've done up to that point in your career. And I think, hey, they said, let's take a chance on this guy. He's got double the night vision goggle time as most guys do when they come here. So I got picked up for an assessment and went and assessed the week long. Whew, man, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough.
Was the assessment flying? Was it physical? Was it mental? If you can tell us anything about that?
Yeah, let me think without giving too much away. It was extremely physical, and it tested you physically, emotionally, and mentally, and it lasts a week. You come in and do PT and a bunch of other things, and then your final for the pilots. Our final day is our check ride. We're given a target depending on what company you're going to. There are Little Birds, Hawks, Chinooks, and then you're given a target, and you have 24 hours, I think, to plan it. And then you go out and fly with your IP that doesn't say a word to you the whole flight for almost 2.5 hours, and you land. You're like, well, and then the next morning you have a formal board, and they watch you the whole week, all the different things that you do during that week, and the regimental commander's there, the unit psych's there, your IP, there's other IPs, warrant officers, senior warrants from the unit, and I think Randy Jones was there at mine, if I remember correctly, but it's very intimidating. Yeah, so to speak, and walk in. Of course, you're in your Class A's, and you knock on the door, and they yell at you, enter, and walk in, present, and then let the meetings begin. Yeah. So
you must have done really well, though, because you got in, and so you've flown Cobras, you've flown Apaches, so you're fully mission qualified. They just give you an airframe and go, okay, you're good.
No, oh no, no. You start all over again in the unit. I mean, it's a process, and you have to work with all the different customers, and you have to learn their ground scheme maneuver. And we had several guys that were former infantry guys, Rangers, so we have a good background on what's going on the ground. Well, that's something that you have to teach everybody, and you have to work with the different colors at a time. And it's for the AH guys, it's about 2 years to get up to FMQ, to fully mission qualified pilot. So you're in, you're a BMQ when you get there, basic mission qualified pilot, and then you spend the next 18 to 24 months training to attain that FMQ status, and then you're a combat ready attack helicopter pilot. So plus teaching the guys to shoot to the standard in which we shoot.
Right. Which so when you went in, you went straight to Little Birds. Can you can go that route straight to the AH-6s?
Yes, sir. Well, I was a gun guy, so that's just the natural progression. The lift guys, the scout guys, they may go to ACO, or they may have a guy, they'll ask you, what you'd like to go fly. And I told them I'll go fly hot air balloons if you want me to. So just give me some hand grenades I can drop on the bad guys, and I'll just float over them. And so, yeah, that back then, that was a natural progression for Cobra. Most of the guys were Cobra Apache guys in B Company, because you already had that background in ballistics and shooting, and it just takes a lot of training and practice to shoot to the high standards which we shoot.
And so what's the difference in terms of your function between basic mission qualified and fully mission qualified? Are you riding number 2? Are you not? If there were a war, are you still, are you the co-pilot? How does that work?
Yes, sir. You're usually in -2, what we call it, or the wingman in the left seat, or we'll fly both seats, because you got to train in both seats and fly and shoot from both seats. So you get about equal time in both. And they say that the hardest job in the Army is flying -2 in B Company, because your whole mission in life is to protect lead. Lead will always have 2 seasoned senior FMQs in the front aircraft, because their job is to positively identify that target and engage that target. So -2, you're sitting back, and of course every pilot has their technique and how they want to skin it, but your whole mission in life is to protect the lead so they can get in there and shoot that target plus or minus 30 seconds.
Now, you said that when you went to the Apache that it was modern technology, and I imagine there are all kinds of gizmos and gadgets. Then you go to the world's prestige aviation unit, top of the top, and into a Little Bird, and tell us what that technological leap was like then, going into the Little Bird.
Well, it's going back about 50 years. There's not a whole lot of technology in that helicopter, and that's the more technology you get, the more they break. It is what it is with helicopters, more electronics, things like that. We still, the aircraft still had the old, we call them steam gauges. We had gauges to look at, not LEDs and screens and glass, and those aircraft just worked. They worked all the time. We have the best crew chiefs on the planet and the best armament personnel on the planet. And I mean, I wouldn't have to pre-flight an aircraft. I'd go out, jump in it, strap it in, crank it up, fly away, not ever worry about it, because they're professionals dedicated to their jobs, and they care about us. So
now you talk about being able to shoot to standard, and I think that anybody in the special operations community who's ever worked with AH-6s knows how precise you guys are on target. What a feat that is. But isn't that just a matter of letting the little moving markers line up, the lasers and the digital things line up, and it's like you got a lock?
Yeah, your HUD and your no.
How do you aim in a Little Bird?
So we use a grease pencil. I'm not kidding. And every gun pilot has their spot on the windscreen. We take a grease pencil, Army issue, 1 each, and you put a little dot up there, and some of them have pretty intricate, they'll have stadia on it. And actually it's ghosted in the cover on my book. And a few guys have picked it up. They're like, "Hey man, that's a pepper." We call it a pepper. So that's another thing in learning to shoot, is placing that pepper at the same exact place every time. So when you pull the trigger, you send a rocket, it's going to go where that pepper is. And that takes, again, is compounded in shooting this helicopter, at the standards in which we shoot. And we shoot pretty close to friendlies, and they have great trust in our abilities, that, they know that if they get in trouble, that we'll come in there and get pretty close to them if we have to.
Very close.
Yeah, it's a grease pencil mark. That's it. We've tried all kind of gizmos and HUDs and sights and red dots and braces, but Fred Horsley, I think, said he was a former B Company gun guy that, the mind's the fastest computer on the planet. And, we're good using the grease pencil mark.
That's amazing. So, that's amazing.
Yep.
I mean, are there guys who go to 160, especially in the assault side, where you have to have that kind of precision, that just they don't have the hands of a surgeon. They just can't quite line it all up and get it?
Sure. In my tenure in BCO, probably saw, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 guys, make it to the company, but they just couldn't shoot. I mean, some of them, were sent on to fly Chinooks or the ACO or, good officers, soldiers, aviators. But when we get on in the terminal area on the objective, it looks like a fur ball if you've ever seen us shoot. I mean, we're breaking and shooting and yanking and banking, and it high potential to get a person sick if they're just not used to it.
Well, that was one of the things that is unique about your book, I think, is that it reads, many parts of it read like a literal action movie firefight that two guys that opposing forces would have on the ground. But
sure.
You are every bit as active and in the mix as the ground forces are.
Yes, sir. And the AH guys, we have to know every element of the ground force. So if it's the Rangers maneuvering or the SMU maneuvering or whatever, but we have to know, because we have to know where every soldier is on the battlefield before we can pull a trigger.
Right.
You have to. So that's another thing that, takes time for guys to learn is, hey, we're going to maneuver this side or that side, and this team's going here and that team's going there, and that company or that fire team. And so, man, it gets a little bit busy up there on the objective.
Greg,
but we're watching out for them.
I got a question real quick. I'm just curious, how do you see that grease pencil mark at night under night vision goggles?
It's pretty easy. We'll make it a little bit bigger, at night. I mean, it's probably, mine was about the size of a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And, you put it up there, and mine was 21 rivets up and then over the inside of the left pedal. And I knew that every time, you check it and check it and check it and check it. So, and all the aircraft were pretty close to the same. And yeah, so some guys use a tape measure or a string or to get that pepper right there, same place every time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the guys really shoot. It's incredible to watch them.
So you're at the 160th. About what year is this when you get there?
93.
93? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the guys were in Somalia and
okay.
When that all went down.
And
I was in Green Platoon.
Okay. It was at the training platoon?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, then you spend the gun guys about 8 to 10 months. Again, because you're teaching us the new guys how to shoot to their standard, which takes time. So.
Well, and is it just the shooting, or are they teaching you how to fly in ways that maybe the conventional Army frowned upon?
Absolutely. And the airframe's completely different. There's no hydraulics in the helicopter, whereas every helicopter you come from, the controls are hydraulically assisted. So, it's a hard airframe to fly. It really is.
It's all fly-by-wire?
No, it's just levers and bell housings, and we always used to say, "There's my hydraulics."
So no power steering is what you're saying.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, but
wow.
It's an extremely difficult aircraft to fly and to learn. It's just very, very responsive, and I always try to explain it to folks. It's the Lamborghini of the Ferrari of helicopters. I mean, it's very, very maneuverable, and it's small. The rudder diameter is 27 feet. So, if we can kind of calculate, okay, yeah, like fellas landed to pick up those guys in Somalia that in Battle of the Black Sea that day. They probably had 3 or 4 inches on each side of the Durham main road. They're incredible. They're just great helicopter pilots.
So between 93 when you were in Green Platoon and then 2001, what was your life like at the 160th?
The op tempo is extremely high, and you're always training. You got 3 Ranger battalions that you're constantly training with, and then the other special operations. Mostly, we work with the Army special operations units, and so I think I average like 290 days a year TDY.
Yeah,
for a long time.
Yeah,
up until 01. Yeah, we're always learning and developing, and a lot of the things that go out to the regular Army or to the Marine Corps, to anybody that flies helicopters. We've done research and development, and General Hutmacher talked about it a bit on his visit, that we do those things, and we want to make better cockpits or better gear or better whatever to help survivability of everybody out there. So it's cost a lot of lives in the early days of the unit when they were trying to figure all this stuff out. Thank God they made us better. I was pretty much the second gen, I guess, the end of the second generation.
Yeah.
So
and it wasn't just your flying, but because I know, and we'll get into this when we get into like your first deployment to Afghanistan, but you learned fires, like you learned the full gamut of it, correct?
Oh yes, sir. You're an expert in fire support, because again, you have to learn, and you're just a close knit family, because you work with all the fire supporters and all the different colors, green, red, and whoever, and you're like brothers, and then you get to know the ground force and other units, because once you're there, you never leave, and you stay there. So you build these relationships and this trust, so to speak. And of course, you hack on each other, and when you make mistakes and do things that aren't so right. And but not only shooting, but it's learning the standard for navigation in that aircraft. And that's with a map, a compass, and a clock. That's it. No GPS, no electronic devices, and you have to become an expert at that, because our standards plus or minus 30 seconds, on time, on target every time. And I've seen guys back in the old days, guys would crash helicopters to make that plus or minus 30 seconds. I was like, oh Lord, what are we doing? But hey, I got to the target, the debrief. It's like, man, you're almost late. Like, no, I made it. Okay. Let's get those tree branches out of the skids or those wheels or, whatever. But yeah, they're very dedicated to that mission and to the ground force.
Yeah. Lives
depend on it.
Yeah.
Sure do.
It's funny because you mentioned, when you talk about the fire support, you mentioned green and red. We get to talk about the fire support from blue too here when we get to your first deployment.
Sure.
So
yeah, that didn't turn out so well.
Yeah. So your first deployment, can we unless there's anything in that time, any notable things that you'd like to talk about, we can either talk about those, or we can fast forward to Afghanistan.
Sure. No, that was, our time was spent staying razor sharp and being prepared to, respond to anything that might come up. And of course, there were many times we were like, come on, man, this is it, we're going. Guys would not take leave because they were afraid they might miss something. The beeper would go off. Yeah. We were like, oh man, no, I can't do that. But,
well, especially when you've been there very plus years, and you've been training all this time, and you're waiting. I want to do my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I always told guys, be careful what you wish for. And then 9/11 came.
Yeah.
And we were busy. We were extremely busy. It was good. You were with your brothers, and you have to go out and kill bad guys every night. So what's better than that?
So tell us what happened on 9/11, not on 9/11, but what happened with the 160th after the events of 9/11.
Yes, sir. I was at Fort Campbell. I believe we had a range that day. So range 29 is our other home. That's our exclusive use only range there at Fort Campbell, where we do all of our shooting, and customers come out and we train there for, 3 to 5 days at a time. But we're home, we're shooting probably 2 to 3 days a week to maintain those standards. And, I always said that shooting is one of the most perishable skills a human has. Now put in there flying a helicopter, hopping on the radio, listening to the radio, and putting the bullets where they're supposed to be every time. So we had 2 groups out. One was Oconus, one was on the East Coast. And I was in the gym that morning. I went in a little late because we work at night and we're not on the regular Army schedule, so to speak. So went there to get a workout in, and I was on the treadmill, and the guy that ran the gym there at Campbell was a former SEAL and really, really good dude. But he walked in and all the TVs were off, and he said, "Hey, I think you need to see this." And he turned the TV on in front of my treadmill, and I see, this tower, clear blue 22, and burning. And I'm like, what in the world happened? He goes, "I think an airplane flew into it, like a small fixed wing." And I go, well, as an aviator, I'm thinking, how in the Sam Hill do you do that? One of the biggest buildings in the world. And then it was just a few seconds later, man, here comes the second one. And my beeper went off. And so, yeah, I hauled butt out to the airfield, and we started, getting kit together and our loadout. And we didn't know what was going on. We had no other than what was being reported on TV. Then we did get word of another plane hitting the Pentagon, and then another plane going down in Pennsylvania. And so we just started our routine of getting the package ready to go wherever we were ordered to go. We kind of had an idea, I think, that, it was going to be Afghanistan area. And so we completed or continued our planning, went out to Fort Bragg a couple times to do planning out there, and then came back and we had our mission, and we were going to Afghanistan. So we put the task force together, and I was out at Fort Bragg, our last planning meeting, and the fire support officer from Delta had just left from B Squadron, was the up squadron. So we were all going together, and Colonel Switter was a Delta Force commander at the time, and approached me, and he says, "Hey, Greg," he says, I'd really like for you to come over as a fire support officer for the task force. And I was like, "Sir, I'm an AH guy. I want to go shoot people." And he understood, and I understood. I was honored, and for him to ask me to do that. So my good friend Leon Hansen was the FSNCO, Fire Support Non-Commissioned Officer for B Squadron, and we've been buddies for a long, long time. And it was a good crew. I mean, it was, of course, the guys that weren't chosen to go, they were poopy faced because everybody wants to go get it on.
Right.
I mean, you just do. That's who we are. That's what we do. So that's God's path for us.
So you are going to Afghanistan as a fire support officer, or as a fire
Yes,
support
sir.
coordinator, and not as an AH-6 pilot at this time.
That's correct. My commander told me that I would assist and, going on missions with the AHs. Also, I was an FMQ. And, but yeah, he's like, "Hey, man, you're the right guy for the right job at the right time at the right place. So guess what? You're it."
Yeah, you had been there 8 years at that point in time. Is that sort of middle of the road, or is that kind of a senior position at that point in time?
For the fires?
Well, no, just for you. I don't know how long pilots are, what their longevity there is. So with you being there 8 years, were you one of the more solid seasoned guys?
Yes, sir. Yeah, one of the more senior guys.
Yeah. So
Yeah, you guys spend 12, 15, 16 years there.
yeah,
So,
and
yeah, that's your home.
and I mean, a lot of people probably don't know this, but being a helicopter pilot, especially sort of in the types of airframes you guys were in and flying the types of missions, it's hard on the body. A lot of hard landings, a lot of compressed spines.
Sure.
Like, I mean, it's as hard on the body as being on the ground, being in the infantry or whatever.
Yes, sir. I would say so. I mean, my kit weighed 60 pounds that I wore in combat, and we always flew with our kit and our plates and vests. And anytime we live fire, you had to wear it. And yeah, it's good training, and it especially the new guy. It'll teach them where to put stuff. Of course, we have SOPs. This goes here, that goes there, so I can reach over and when it's dark and I know there's a magazine or a tourniquet or a radio or whatever the case. Right. But yeah, it's especially wearing night vision goggles on a helmet all those years. Everybody gets the Nightstalker neck, so to speak. And yeah, it's hard on backs and knees and shoulders and yeah.
And one more thing before we move forward is when you talk about going to the range and shooting, and then you mentioned where the magazines are. You guys would carry your M4s and actually engage with M4s sometimes if need be, correct?
Yes. Oh yes. Yeah, we might have dropped a grenade or two out of the cockpit also. So
yeah. For those of you who haven't seen a Little Bird, kind of just look one up, but they're open side. There's no doors. There's nothing. It's just wide open. So
yes.
So you deploy as the fire support coordinator, and where did you guys go, and what did you spin up for?
Yeah, we went to Masira Island. It's a small island there off of Oman, and it was ironic. I think I'd said to the battle staff there one evening that, hey, you know what? It was 20 years earlier when Colonel Beckwith and the Delta guys departed from the same airfield to go do Desert One. And we were departing to go into Afghanistan and get some terrorists.
And
so
which terrorist?
We staged there.
I'm sorry, was there a specific terrorist that you were going after at that point in time?
Bin Laden and his crew.
Okay.
Yeah, Zarqawi, or not Zarqawi, but Omar and Bin Laden and just whoever was out there looking for a fight. That's who we went and got it on with. So,
and
very clear mission statement.
And what was the first mission that you guys flew out there?
Well, my first mission as the fires guy was to go and recce the route that the Chinooks were going to take. They were going to launch off a ship with Delta for our first official mission. We'd been conducting missions for some time prior to that. Was 19 October 2001. It was Rhino Gecko 375 Rangers did an airborne combat assault on the Rhino to secure that landing area, and then of course Gecko or B Squadron went in. We had thought that Omar may be there and maybe Bin Laden, so that was our first target there west of Kandahar. But I had flown several missions to reconnaissance the route that the Chinooks and the DAPs would take to the target, and cleared them and picked a route for those guys, and of course went to the ship with it and made sure they were all good with it, and they were. So cleared route all the way into the objective area on both objectives, and so we just planned off that and went from there. And I did several more missions just to set the conditions in the battle space and engage targets, any targets that we could find, all over that southern desert, and then Kandahar over all the way west to Lashkar.
Do you mind? Do you mind telling us a little bit about Gecko, because that was quite a read in your book, and I mean from the briefing, your unwelcome guest. If you want to tell us about that, and we don't mind throwing shade. at Blue here at all. We do it all the time.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
And really sort of some of what happened on target, what you did, like, if you don't mind walking us through it.
Yeah, there's always Mr. Murphy. He always raises his ugly head, and burp. But I mean, we did our brief, we did our planning, we did our brief, went a couple trips to the ship, and, final stuff with Leon and the guys out there, and then I came back, and so we took 5 AC-130U model gunships. 3 were going to had them task organized, 3 going to Gecko, 2 going to Rhino to cover the Rangers. And then we could use spares and backups, if somebody broke. So we had to get fuel and to do the mission set. So we had some Air Force tankers were to meet us over a point, over the ocean, at this very specific time. And it was all time driven. The mission is. So we get on station, there's no tankers. And I'm like, oh crap, there's no tankers and there's no tankers. And we're like, this is a national strategic mission. And we can't afford to be late because the Chinooks were taking off from the ship. And a lot of pieces, I had 80 some aircraft that were going to be overhead, bombers, from B-1s to Tornadoes and F-16s and B-2s and B-52s. And I was just beside myself. So we all get on the radios, we're calling. And so they were late, and they finally showed up, and we were late. We were behind. I think it was close to 35, 40 minutes. That's a long time. But we had several hundred miles to make it up. And I was talking to the aircraft commander on the lead tanker, and she wanted me to verify who we were through challenges and passwords. I'm like, look, lady, what are the chances of 5 AC-130s are going to show up at the same place and you're late? You better give us gas or we're going to shoot you down. I ain't kidding. So we back and forth. So we finally got our gas, and then the nav. I mean, everybody on that AC-130, we were doing calculations, and I had an E6B, the old whiz wheel that pilots use to figure fuel and burn rates and times, and of course the nav. He was on his computer. I think the FOCO, the fire guy, he was on his, and I was nugging numbers because I got to a point where I'd have to call the flight and tell them to drop kick. I didn't want them holding over Indian territory, bad guy country in Afghanistan. So there were a lot of things. There was a lot of stress, and of course, we're calling back to the jock and giving them updates, and they were calling quite a bit. And I was like, hey, look, just give us a few minutes to work through this. And I believe we either I was praying for a tailwind, so we could gain some time, gain some airspeed along that route. And sure enough, the aircraft commander, we were lead AC-130, and he says, hey man, I'm going to put the pedal to the metal, and he hammered those engines, and I swear he was running in the red for a long time, but we made up our time. And, I got to a decision point where I was going to have to call the flight of Chinooks and tell them, hey, you're going to have to hold, en route or whatever the case, and then drop kick the TOT, time on target there to the objective. Now, plus the Rangers would have to, drop kick and hold. And I mean, it was.
You also had an unwelcome guest, right? Or a surprise guest, I would say, on this flight.
Yes, sir, somewhat. He was a fighter pilot. He was the TF Blue, the SEAL team fires guy. Nobody had ever seen him, or he hadn't been to any planning missions or briefs or He just showed up at the AC-130, on mission night. And of course, I was giving him a hard time. And the guys on the aircraft were, and the aircraft commander, old Swede, he got the name from being a big dude, and he told him, hey, you just sit in that corner over there and don't say anything. And so, yeah, that was, we were kind of concerned about that. And another strap hanger, so to speak, I'll just say it. And we later on that night, though, we almost had an extremely serious incident because he jumped in on the radio, didn't have any situational awareness as to what was going on. He hadn't been following the battle, and I'll just tell you, he called in I think it was 4 F-18s to drop bombs on a target reference point that was right on the route of the Chinooks, and the Chinooks were coming out of the target. And I heard something, I was talking and listening, and they were exfilling at that time, and it had been a very successful mission so far that night, other than the aircraft having multiple bullet holes in them. And I'd heard something, cleared hot, or I can't remember the exact verbiage, but I didn't, for sure one was a fighter pilot, and I kind of looked over to the right, and I could see this guy's mouth moving.
Oh boy! And
I said, "Hey, who's that's on the net?" And the guy said, "Shut up, I'm working on the mission." I said, "The Chinooks are coming out." And I glanced at I knew that TRP, and I glanced down at my map, and I jumped up, and I said, knock it off, ceasefire. I put out on all the nets. And I heard the lead fighter bombing pilot say, roger that, knock it off. But yeah, the guy was working a bombing mission, and the bombs would have dropped on those 6 Chinooks full of Delta operators.
And you had a friendly chat with him at that point?
Pardon?
You had a friendly chat with him at that point?
Yes, it was a very two-sided friendly chat that I had with that young man.
Yes.
Sure enough.
Read the book if you'd like to hear the real story.
Yeah. Read the book.
Yeah.
It wasn't very friendly at all. I wasn't a kind chief.
Yeah. So, and also, definitely read the book, because the detail that you go into about that whole operation, the level of air, the ground force movement, I mean, it is staggering what's going on, and how much air you're controlling, and how much scunion they're laying, how much ordnance was dropped on that objective that night.
It was unbelievable. It really was. I had a couple moments, or a combat pause, so to speak, and of course said prayers for the guys going in on the objective, and the guys flying in that nasty environment. It's, one of the most dangerous things we do is take off and land. It was always brown out.
Yeah.
And, we've had incidents and accidents, and it's hard. And, but yeah, I was very honored to be there. It was the longest air assault ever conducted in the history. Guys flew over 1,000 miles that night, and just to the target, not to include follow on and getting back to the ship. That was a long day.
Sure. Now, were your brother AH-6 pilots, were they up in the air and flying that up?
No, sir. We didn't have the legs, to get us there. And of course, we tried. We came over there with contingency, like, hey, we can land on C-130s, and push out and be on target and preparatory fires, or we can take the outer perimeter. And yeah, the boss said, no, we're not going to do it.
So you were the first one amongst your peers who actually got into the action then?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah. I had a good friend of mine, Jim Hosey. He was an AH pilot there in B Company, and I told him when we came back from Bragg on that last trip, I said, man, he goes, what's up? And I said, well, I've been tasked as, the TF Sword, one of the fire support officers. And he was like, dude, I'm telling you, you're going to be in the middle of that stuff before any of us see anything. I'm like, no, I don't believe so. But yeah, he was right. He was right.
So what was the rest of Iraq like for you? Are there any notable operations that you want to talk about, or? I mean, did the little
In Iraq?
start? Yeah, or I mean, Afghanistan. I'm sorry, because the second operation was in Lashkar Gai, correct? Or the second
Yes,
big
correct.
operation? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the big, Major Greer and that group, then our focus, we had Bin Laden on the run and had some locations for him. And the AHs got into the fight after that, and they were going out pretty much every night. And I flew some missions on that. And we picked up, I guess notable, we picked up Mr. Karzai that first time and brought him back, and then took him back to do his thing with the Northern Alliance. And, of course, from the north, we were in the south. Fifth Group was up there kicking ass and taking names. And, man, those guys, they just did an incredible job. But no, we pretty much went into the battle space and killed the bad guys. That was our mission that had been given to us.
Yeah.
And it was 22nd SAS and, Task Force Sword, and then the Task Force to the north with Fifth Group. And, and I tell folks that I even made the statement, I said, we did in 9 weeks what the Russians couldn't do in 8 years.
Yeah.
Literally. We did.
I mean,
We're a very small, specialized group of men.
Yeah, there were nights when between the ground force and your air assets, I mean, hundreds of Taliban fighters and AQ fighters, like, just schwacking them.
Yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. It was a good time. Bad people.
Yeah. And there was an incident, was it Lashkar Gai, where everybody was assigned an officer as a supervisor, or what was that particular operation?
No, that wasn't that. It wasn't that one.
No, it wasn't that one.
No, sir. I think it might have been. It might have been. Yeah, the op in Lashkar Gai. That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
And how did that come down? What happened there? Because people who are not familiar with the military won't really get this, but people who have been in the military will completely understand the lack of logic that went into this decision.
Well, and you have to understand at that level, the commander puts full faith and confidence in the warrant officers. We are the subject matter experts, and flying and planning and working with the ground force and whatever the case. And there aren't very many commissioned officers, so we're kind of under the old H series, where a major is a company commander, not a captain, like in the regular Army. Platoon leader is a captain in 160th, not a lieutenant. But then there's, 2 captains and then a major company commander, and then the rest are warrant officers. So, and the other thing is, to put it in perspective, is that I think at that time, I'd have to go back and look, but there are probably only about 18 or 20 FMQ pilots, combat ready pilots per company. That's not very many dudes, man.
Yeah.
It's really not. If a guy gets hurt or something happens, then, we just really have to double up and make sure things get done. So our first mission was out to, like you said, out to Lashkar Gai. There was a bunch of mechanized, and there were tanks, and there were Taliban, there were Al-Qaeda training camps. I mean, it was a target-rich environment. And again, I was out in the AC, several times a week, and engaging targets and setting conditions for follow-on missions. But so we had planned an attack mission. We had the location of some forces out there between Kandahar and Lashkar Gai. Lashkar Gai is to the west. And so at the last minute, the commander decided to put a platoon leader in the team. So it booted a warrant, our guys were, I think one was FMQ. Yeah, he was an FMQ, but the others were BMQ. So that didn't sit real well with the warrants.
Yeah.
This is serious business, and we're the subject matter experts, and we're the professionals. And we're the ones that need to be flying these missions. They're dangerous.
Sort of like when the S3 is in the chalk for the jump for the airfield seizure.
Oh yeah, you know. Yeah. Yeah, or the intel guys sitting in the jump seat of the Chinook or whoever.
Now,
nothing bad on the intel guys.
Was it La Shurga where you won the air medal with a V?
That was Kandahar when I was with Jamie Weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my first combat mission that I flew with Jamie. Okay. When we ran into it must have been I don't know if it was like a remain overnight site for Talakong, as we call them, or man, there were several in there that I'd gone down a little draw and look, we were out hunting. We were just west of Kandahar, and it just looked like a good place tactically to me, where dudes would be hanging out or vehicles, and yeah, if we found them, probably 60 to 80 guys. So yeah, we'd split just to cover more terrain, and the other AH went coming to the north of us, and they ran into a bunch of guys up there. Yeah, and Jamie and I ran into several. I think they fired probably, I know at least 3 or 4 RPGs at us before we kind of figured out what that whooshing sound was, because neither one of us had been out there doing the deed. And then a 12-7 opened up and a 14 opened up, and then we were like, uh-oh, time to go to work, boys. Yeah, so yeah, we killed all of them. So shot some of them with our rifles.
So they have anti-aircraft. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about like 12-7, 14, right? They have anti-aircraft opening up on you, and instead of saying, "Okay, we need to get out of here," you say it's time to go to work.
Yes, yeah, it's time to go find them and kill them.
And you did that.
That's what we do. Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah, we did.
That's amazing. So, what? I'm not sure how much longer your deployment in Afghanistan was, or if there are any notable moments you want to talk about or tell us about.
No, sir. It was. I mean, for us, and we had pretty much gotten the word that our next priority would be Iraq. Okay. So we were going to, jump out of there and then start the planning process for our next mission, which was, Saddam's realm and his hierarchy, and then WMDs or, whatever the case was. So we knew we got home and immediately started the planning process for that next operation.
Okay. So you start that planning process. You find yourself moving out in February, March, sometime around there of 2003.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, we went out southwest where the terrain was very much like Iraq or that part of the world. We had mountains, we had desert, we had, all sorts of nasty terrain out there to operate and train in. So yeah, we continued that for several months, and had a good plan put together, and it was all, of course, we operate at night and all under the cover of darkness and away from prying eyes, so to speak, or whatever it may be. And we prepared for deployment in February of 2003.
Okay. And then where did you deploy to?
We deployed to RR, Saudi Arabia, and up there northern, kind of north central Saudi Arabia, right on, not far from the Iraqi border, from the berm there. And it was us. And I think we took 4 AHs to OEF for Afghanistan, and we took 8 AHs to Iraq, just so we could cover all, 3 Ranger battalions, Delta, and all the others that, we had worked some with 5th Group for that planning process. So, we wanted to be able to provide enough fire support for those forces that needed us at that time.
And RR was probably an oasis, right? A desert.
Oh man, yeah, it was swimming pools. It was on-call breakfast. It was, Yes. Yeah. Indoor gym,
Right.
great chow hall. No, it was none of that. We got on the ground. Of course, we're Army guys, so nothing's there. And we find some old ratty tent that was rolled up in a ball and started setting it up. And, of course, it was dark. We landed and put the aircraft to bed and prepared everything, PCI, pre-combat inspection, make sure the aircraft are locked and cocked or loaded, weapons are good to go. And, that's always our priority. And we'll finish our part, crew chiefs, armament dogs. They're still going over the aircraft, making sure the weapon systems are all good to go. We had Gal 19s, the 3-barrel 50 cal also. So that's just another tool for our toolbox or a kit bag that we can deploy. And so we started making a home with the Rangers and everybody else that was camped out there at RR, and started our planning processes and start building. And we had to have a planning area and a briefing area, so those were first to go up. So yeah, it was a good time.
So it was Iraq where you earned the title as the world's greatest counterpuncher.
World's greatest counterpuncher. Yeah, I'm sure it was. It was.
So
I earned a lot of. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
No, so was your first big op there? Was that Haditha Dam, or had you done things prior to that?
Yes, for our first big operation, it was pretty much just the AHs. We had our D-Day was 19 March, where the rest of the force was 21 March. So we went out, we hit VisObs, so visual observation posts, radar sites, to open those corridors for fast movers and the main force that was, getting ready to attack on the 21st. So we spent those first two, 19th and 20th. We were out every night, 4 teams, 2 AHs each. And then other special operations forces were moving north and, just all over looking for scuds or any of those potential targets that could hurt us or hurt the attacking force when it started.
When you're
I'm
sorry. When you're out
go ahead.
in a little bird, I mean, you're very exposed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're out there 2 birds or 4 birds by yourselves deep behind enemy lines. Do you feel vulnerable, or do you feel like you're fast and low and hard to hit? Like, what's the sensation that you have?
Well, it's dark. And that's the first thing. I mean, we are night stalkers, not day stalkers. So bad things happen to us when we go stalking in the day. But no, it's, we use the terrain, we use our speed, we use our training, and, whatever we can to make sure we're successful. And in our teams that went out, we configured, so we had an MH with us, little bird, and he had a FLIR pod on his bird. So we went back in time, kind of, in the old pink teams from Vietnam. So a scout and a gun. So, it's a Loach and a Cobra, or 2 Cobras. He would go out front and use the FLIR to, positively identify hot spots and targets. And of course, we were on our maps, and everything was checked and double checked and triple checked. And then we had some A-10s overhead. So how we configured them, and I love the concept, but so we weren't, really by ourselves. I mean, we had other folks there, but that was the other reason for the MH little bird, that, if something did happen to one of the AHs, and they could land, pick us up, and take us back to RR. So we would shoot the target, engage the target, and then when Dash 2 would break off the trail AH, the A-10s would be tipped in their gun run, and as soon as we were clear, man, they'd start hammering it with 30 or drop a bomb, or because that's when we're most vulnerable is in our brakes, trying to get back around. And they're pretty quick. I mean, they're only a few seconds, but still, there were some very large compounds that we hit. And it was, and hear that gun go off, it was just warm and fuzzy. And I'll never forget their call sign was Shiner. They were from a Texas Guard unit. And yeah, so they were great guys. And we were just glad to, all be a part of the team.
Yeah.
And that was our first two nights. And then the 21st, we sat down, and then we started going deeper and deeper for more visual observations. And our intent was to take buyout Baghdad International Airport. So they're in Baghdad, Saddam International, it was called. And to get the force there, and then start hunting the deck of 55 and any other emerging targets that would come.
Yeah.
It's busy.
Yeah. And so then, so Haditha, because I know that was a huge op that you wrote in your book. Can you?
Yeah, that's the biggest chapter in the books about Haditha.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We got the mission to go up north with 375 to camp out with the Rangers for a few days. And there were some other missions going on simultaneously that we got bumped off of, but it is what it is. And so we went up to H1, where 375 did an airborne combat assault. There was an airfield up there, and that's west of Haditha Dam, which is one of the largest dam structures in the world. I think it's 3 to 5 miles wide and about 300 feet tall. I mean, it's a very big structure. It's hydroelectric, so they provide electricity, everything down, the Euphrates and the Tigris all the way to Baghdad. And it was the most key piece of terrain in Iraq. So the mission was hold the dam, clear the dam, and then I think it was an armor force was supposed to come relieve us in place that next day. And so we got up there and did some short planning with 375, and they went over, they jumped in, secured the airfield. We came in on C-17, offloaded, and the Rangers drove. They went over by land, and then we linked up with them when they got there, and it was quite a sight. That's all I can say. When I'd pulled up the radios, and I could hear the FSNCO, Fire Support Sergeant for 375 on the dam. They were in a west blocking position. I think there were 5 or 6 Rangers there. And every time he keyed the mic, I could hear the gunfire, automatic gunfire, machine gun fire. Every time just get more intense. And I noticed that particular FSNCO was, we were close and good friends and known each other for a long time. Well, his voice started going up in octaves, and you just know with working with the guys all the time, same time, that, okay, shit's going down and we got to get there. It was about a 17-minute flight from the airfield to the dam. And I was so angry at the radios. I couldn't talk to anybody, and I could hear them. And finally, I looked at the guy I was flying with, and I said, I just had all I could take. And I said, a man standing on the moon in 1968 can talk to Houston, Texas, and I can't talk to my fire supporter, 10 miles away. And I finally got on the satellite radio, and I pushed all traffic aside. I said, this is an emergency. And I could hear Mo, asking, where are the AHs? They were about to get overrun by a very large force. It's about a company-sized element. And, finally I got in touch with him. We were about 3 minutes out, and I said, hey, we're less than 3 minutes, and he's like, I'm afraid this is going to be over in 3 minutes. And, I mean, it was very, very intense, and there's a huge lake north of the dam. I can remember we hit the lake, got right on the water, and then bumped up. And when we bumped up, it was one of the most incredible sights I'd ever seen. There were just tracers just everywhere. Of course, company of Rangers and a few of the Delta guys were on the dam, and then they had folks going through it, breaching and clearing that dam. It was a huge, huge structure. And, we saw a very large size element attacking that west blocking position. And when we shot approximately 12 meters in front of that Ranger blocking position. That's how, it was just about to be a knife fight for that time. So God watched over us and gave us some tailwind to get us there a lot faster. And so we killed that. I don't know, there's probably 70, 80 enemy troops coming up to that blocking position. Then immediately got a call for fire from the east blocking position, another Ranger. And I remember chuckling because it's, these Rangers, and us too, we beat into everybody's head that standard call for fire. Hey, this is me from my position, 360 degrees, 400 meters, marked by, Well, and that's what he was, under stress. Same thing, a very large force was attacking their side and flanking. Standard call for fire, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to let him spit it out. I said, I saw him, we saw him. And I'm like, hey, brother, I have your position, just mark the target. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. So here come lasers, and, we went over there and serviced those knuckleheads trying to kill our Rangers on the east side. And then it was constant for the next, till the sun started coming up. I think we shot 9-10 loads there at the dam that night. It was,
you'd go bingo or Winchester, and then you'd have to go back and reload, and then.
Yes, sir. We had the Rangers put in a small park, not too far from the dam. It was just a couple minute turnaround. There were 4 loads there, and we burned it up. Quick. And I can remember getting on SAT, calling back to the talk to see if we could get another aircraft, because we have to manage that ammo, and we have to forecast and kind of figure out what we're going through at the time, what we're going to need for the next few hours or several hours. And I was going to see if somebody could bring us some more ammo, because we went through that 4-load fart pretty quick. We had gas there and some Z bags, so we land, pilots jump out, and we load up the rockets and the guns, and then go get back in the fight. And then the other loads, we had to fly all the way back to H1. They had a fart set up there for us, and I swear, man, those guys look like a Indy or NASCAR pit crew, man. As soon as you land, it's going. We're in now there in under 3 minutes, probably full load, full gas, and back to the fight.
I just want to point out to the viewers out there, I really encourage them to read Greg's book about all of this from the 160th perspective, and just go and do some research on Haditha Dam and that operation in general to understand it. That was a very significant battle that took place there, and I missed it because I was actually in the Ranger indoctrination program during the invasion.
Oh, okay.
So I was a little bit behind. I wasn't there. But when I did get there, I got to hear all the stories firsthand from the Rangers who were there on the ground. And like one guy I know who was a medic leapfrogging forward with his platoon sergeant as the Rangers, the squads were bounding forward. And they were right behind him. And so this guy is a Ranger medic with a platoon sergeant looping det cord around the barrels of the anti-aircraft guns. And then popping the time fuse, bounding to the next position as it blows up behind them. It's felt like doing some commando shit out there, and they were.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen, and I had ever even imagined. It was, it was a busy night, and we nobody was killed. We had, I think, 3 injured. I think 3 Rangers were injured. When it all was over with and smoke cleared, and we got them out, got them to the cache. We escorted one of our Chinooks in there a couple nights later and dropped off food and ammo and water for the guys on the dam. But yeah, I think we wound up being there for a week. Our initial mission was 24 hours, but yeah, it is what it is.
When you're in the thick of things like that and such a target-rich environment, how long does it take you to go through the armament that you're carrying?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We manage it. I mean, I can average 12 to 14 engagements. Managing my minigun, because we carry 14 rockets. So, and not every target will need a rocket. Not every target will need minigun or gal. The 50 cal. So it's up to that each individual attack pilot flying, at that time, as to how they, that's what we're trying to do, is to look at that target. What can we use to destroy that target? Or is it troops in the open? Is it light armor? Is, things like that. So generally, yeah, I'd say 14, 15 engagements if you, if you're managing right. Plus our M4s, and we were dropping hand grenades on groups of folks too. So it's very, very effective.
Yeah.
Very effective.
So in a very thick fight like that, 14 engagements really is not a whole. It's not a whole lot of time on target.
What, like an hour maybe in a heavy firefight?
No, you'd go through that in a heavy, like the dam, 15 minutes.
Yeah. That's amazing.
10 minutes. I mean, you're turning and, you go from one side to the other side. And the thing that struck me were the amount of wires there, because I guess somebody forgot to tell us about all the electrical wires that it looked like a spider web. So, we had to make sure we were up higher than we kind of planned on being, and then they would start to get mortared. Well, in that river bottom, that river will wash and it'll make, like, I guess, little sand dunes. Well, those guys would sneak in there with the mortar crew and start lobbing mortars at the Rangers. Well, so I got to looking down river and I could see the flash coming out of the tube.
Wow.
So I'd say, hey, we all carried little commander's pointers, little lasers, because it's really fast. We carry more vests. Whoever's flying, the other guy's like, there's a flash. We, okay, I got it. So we just fly down the river. And sure enough, there they'd be, and we, engaging with many. And then go to the next one. You see another flash and another flash. And yeah, so it was a busy time. It was a busy night. Every night.
I imagine that in addition just to the battle stress, the stress of combat, it sounds like you had a real sense of responsibility for the troops on the ground. So, did that add, how much pressure did that add to you when you were doing your turnarounds, when you were going back to the FARP and things like that?
Yeah, man, it's again, we have these very, very close relationships with all the guys, and Jack, Dave, and our for me, my job was to protect those guys. We were the archangels, or however you want to look at it or call it. But, my whole mission in life was to protect those. Those were my brothers. Those were my buddies. And one time we were hitting a bunch of targets in Fallujah, and the Delta commander asked me if we would please not kill all the guys at the target, so the guys would have somebody to shoot at when they got there. And I was like, sir, my job is to protect my brothers, so that's what we're doing. But yeah, that was me personally. Is I was very driven to support them and protect them.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. The battle in the book is phenomenal. It's significant. And then there's
oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
And then there are a couple other, things that happen, but can we go to, Amaria?
Amaria. Oh, that was another walk in the park day. I remember that one. Yeah. So that was 19 March 2004. Is that the specific date we're referring to?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, oh man, it was, we were hitting Ramadi, Fallujah, Amaria. It was a triangle out west of Baghdad. And 03, 04, 05, 06, you guys, it was the wild, wild west out there. It was a lot of Al Qaeda, and they were having foreign fighters just by the droves come into that area. And we had hit a target in Fallujah the night of the 18th through that period of darkness, and got some information off that target that there was another guy that we were looking for that would be at a house in Fallujah at 10 that morning. So, we were like, daytime. We had done no day mission since 3 October 93 in the Battle of the Black Sea. And so Sergeant Major just told us, hey, you guys just, go out there and land. We're going to drive to this house, get this guy, or, look for him. And, if something comes up, we'll just call you. So, it's just a couple minute response to, if they needed us, we could get there. But he didn't want to expose us for the daytime. So I hit that target, got the guy. So they came back and they told us, hey, go back to Biot, go back to Baghdad International Airport and go down for a while. So we did, and it was this after 12, we got a call that there was, and then off of that target, they got intel that there was another guy we were looking for in Amaria, which was south of Fallujah. So over the previous weeks, there have been, I think, 7 helicopters shot down in that triangle between Ramadi, Fallujah, and Amaria. And I don't think there were any survivors. There's been a couple Chinooks and 58s and Blackhawks. So bad place. And so there was a tick with that recce team. So we jumped in the aircraft to, go help them. And they're like, hey, they're in trouble. Troops in contact was a call. And we just assumed they'd been ambushed coming out of that target. So we got on station. It was 13:15 local, 1:15 p.m. there in Iraq. Of course, it was daylight. And I mean, every one of us, the hair was standing up on our necks. But we're like, hey, we're going. So, if they need us, then we're going to be there for them. And got on station, and long story short, we're getting ready to exfil, and I got hit with a missile that I never saw. And it came to be, it was an SA-16 system, so that's a pretty highly advanced system for that time of period. And they didn't even think there were any in the country, SA-7s and, things like that. But I have a theory about all that. I talk about it in the book. But, I was in a climbing right-hand turn, and when the missiles hit, and it has a proximity fuse. So what a proximity fuse does, for those of you that don't know, is they'll set it to a distance, so like 3 feet or 10 feet or whatever, and then that fuse will detonate, so they get maximum shrapnel into the engine or into the aircraft, whatever they're shooting the missile at. It's pretty advanced. It's a heat seeker, so it goes for the engine when it's shot. Actually, 2 of the guys, they saw the shot from a 2-story building on the very west side of the Ville there, and it hit, and it was a huge explosion. I mean, it sounded like, big breach in charge, or, a mortar, pretty close proximity. And I remember out of the corner of my eye, I saw this, this flame went by me and my co-pilot. So the left seat said, this meter long white hot rod went right by my head. So it kind of got shot at an angle and then hit the end, detonated, and hit the aircraft. And of course the big explosion. So that was a clue right there. I was like, uh-oh. Then things got real quiet. The engine quit running, and you have warnings in the aircraft. So if you get a low engine RPM or low rotor, they start beeping. And I was just thinking to myself, I was like, man, I wish those things would shut the heck up. I know I'm hit. I know the engine quit. I know I'm in an auto rotation, and I've got this. I'm good. But at that second, and the best way I can explain this is it was like a movie that went frame by frame by frame. I mean, and I understand the physiological effects under stress, and we start dumping adrenaline, and all these things start going. You guys have been there, but yeah, it was. And my biggest concern was there's nothing to judge your height out there for an airplane guy or a helicopter pilot, especially doing an emergency procedure as an auto rotation. You need to use those things to start your decel, because there's very particular things that we have to do as a pilot to get that aircraft safely on the ground. So at 75 feet, you start a progressive decel to bleed off that airspeed. Then you hold that till 15 feet. You pull initial with a collective, so that puts a little bit of pitch in the rotor blade to kind of cushion you, to soften that approach down. And then I do remember, I said to myself, I want a real aggressive decel, because I want very little ground run. I didn't know what was down there. I didn't know what the ground was like. And again, I was watching the radar altimeter, and my rotor, I remember my rotor getting real high, like 105 point something. So I put a little more collective in, to get it under control. Because if you don't control it, it can just spin off the helicopter, and then you don't have anything. And so I kept glancing at the radar altimeter, and the whole time I could, I heard a few radio calls, but you're just so focused at the task at hand. And of course, when it hit, a big explosion, I was like, okay, it's time to go to work. So get it in trim, step on that pedal, control my rotor, watch my altitude, 75 feet. I started my decel, and then 15 feet, I leveled it, because I thinking to myself, I was real heavy, I was full of gas, full of ammo, and I had a tailwind. I had the worst conditions I could have to conduct an auto rotation, that helicopter. And that particular helicopter falls like a greased crowbar when you're not loaded. I mean, they just don't, they sink at 2,700 feet per minute. So I was about 165 feet above the ground when the missile hit. When a climbing right-hand turn, I was headed southwest. I remember, because I just swooped the boys, and kind of did the wave. We're like, we're out of here, And I said, I'm gonna pull everything I have right before I touch down. That's what I did. And we touched down, and the other aircraft said, man, it was the prettiest auto rotation he had ever seen. So I was like, okay, that's good. We touched down, and we slid probably about 35 meters, and the skids went down a bit of a slope. Of course, I'm thinking to myself, oh, yes, we got this. I'm going to get this thing stopped. And as soon as we touched down, though, that dust and dirt just filled the cockpit. And you can't see. And the skids stuck in some soft dirt. So we started to roll end over end. We rolled multiple times. And I think at some point I was knocked out for a short time, and the co-pilot was, and I came to, and of course, we came to rest inverted, so upside down, and the helicopter was on fire. And again, two of the guys had seen the missile shot, so they immediately started to suppress that building. One was a Ranger, and the other was one of the Delta guys. And then the other AH went to work, shooting, trying to suppress stuff back on that side, because it just kind of stirred a hornet's nest at that time. And, anytime we have an event like that, parachute or fast roping or in a helicopter, you're going to go through those checks. Like, okay, I can move my toes, I can move my feet, my legs are kind of working. Check my package. Okay, it's good. My arms, and so I'm just going through these, and it's all slow motion. And I look over at the co-pilot. He's got blood all over his face. So I think to myself, well, did he get hit? Did he? And the little bird was somewhat infamous for the shoulder harness not locking in a crash sequence, especially in a roll. So I thought, okay, well, he did the old cyclic kiss. What happens, the guy will hit the cyclic with his mouth in the crash sequence. So then my priority was, okay, here we are, little black helicopter shot down 300 meters from the bad guys. So I got to get out. I got to get out and make sure we're secure. And, and I knew the guys were there. So there was 5 vehicles in the recce team, and I looked at my co-pilot. I put my hand on his shoulder, and I said, "Hey, man, get out!" And I said, "Meet me over here, because you don't want to get in front of an armed aircraft, because you don't know if a rocket might go off." And I didn't know any of the conditions until I got out. And it was the whole back cargo area was on fire, and when I came to, I was kind of hanging there in the straps, and I was like, "What is all that popping sound?" That sounded like popcorn. Well, that was ammo cooking off in the ammo cans behind me. I mean, they're right behind me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's not good. And then I had 17-pound rockets on board. So I'm like, well, what's going to happen when these rockets heat up or catch on fire? Will they explode, or, what are they going to do? So I crawled out of the helicopter. I grabbed my rifle, and I tried to stand up. My right leg wouldn't work. I tried to take a step, and I just hit the ground. And then at the same time, the other AH was coming to check on us. They had flown over us, I think, 2 or 3 times. And they told me later, they said, man, if we hadn't seen you crawling out, we were landing, and we thought you guys were dead. And the ground force said the same thing. So they saw me crawling out and get up, and I'd fall and get up. He said, I looked like a circus clown. I'd get up and fall down, get up and fall down. But my right leg wasn't, and they told me later I'd gotten a stinger to that L spine on that right side. And I did finally get up. Then I sat back down, and I thought, well, maybe my leg's broken. So I pulled my pant leg up, checked both legs, checked myself again, and got my rifle, got up, did 360 degrees security around the aircraft to make sure nobody was coming. And I could hear the guys to the east of me. They were getting it on. Everybody was shooting at this point, and they were on the radios and, trying to get some help in there. And then I went back to the aircraft we carry our little rucksacks right behind us. So in there, was water, hand grenades, or night vision goggles, and, just stuff that you need. Well, it was fully engulfed in fire. So I'm like, I'm not reaching my arm in there to get that out. And then I went back, I checked on the co-pilot again, and he was hanging there just kind of dazed and confused. I was like, hey, you okay? And he's like, just shook his head. And I said, all right. I said, you got to get out. The helicopter's on fire. I said, I ain't kidding. So I kind of crawled back out, went back out, and I kind of took a knee. And I was looking to the east. And then I looked back, and I said, where in the world is he? So I crawled back. I crawled in the helicopter, and I pulled his latch on his seatbelt. And he fell down. When he hit his head, and he kind of looked up, and I guess it kind of brought him back to what the heck was going on. So I just grabbed. Fire was just licking at his arm when I got in there. And I said, man, I got to get him out of here right now. So I just grabbed him, pulled him up on top of me, and just pushed. I just pushed with my legs out of the aircraft to get him out. Kind of rolled him over, and then did a quick assessment on him. And what had happened, he bitten through his tongue in the crash sequence, and that's where all the blood came from. Yeah. He had L-spine injuries, and we were all pretty beat up, pretty bad. I had over a total like 34, 35, 36 surgeries, and I have over 40 pieces of titanium in my body. So, yeah, another day at the office for a 6-gun.
You describe your actions during the crash with such clarity. How you were at 165 feet? How long did it take you to fall, to plummet from 100? All these actions you're describing, all these thoughts that are going on. How long did it take you to go from 165 feet to the ground?
Approximately 3.4 seconds. Yeah, they took all the data and sent it down to Fort Rucker, and they put it to replay it. And one of the guys told me that the machine couldn't successfully land the helicopter with all the wind, the tailwinds, the airspeeds, the height, the data. That it was impossible to successfully land the helicopter.
It is absolutely amazing to me that you sat there and spent 5 minutes going into detail of each of your actions, of your awareness of the auto rotate, of all the things you were doing, and that was within a 4-second period of time.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the whole sequence was about 8 seconds from the time we stopped rolling, got on slid, and came to rest. Yeah, it's about 8 seconds.
What do you attribute all that to, Greg, that you were able to successfully survive that? I mean, is that your training? Is that the man upstairs looking over your shoulder?
That's training and the good Lord saying, "Okay, I'm not done with you yet, mister. I have a purpose for you." Yeah, absolutely. Our guardian angels were, golly. Well, I wrote about a bunch of them in the book. So, again, the good Lord put me in so many places at so many times that, it's like Kyle Lamb and George, and they're like, "Hey, you have got to write about some of this crazy stuff that you've done." And Kyle always told me that he'd say, "Gravy, if it ain't written, it never happens." So I really took that to heart. My wife was my biggest inspiration for writing these stories because I didn't want to do it. I'll tell you quite frankly, I was scared to do it. I didn't want to be that guy, and nobody had really written about the 160th the way that we put this into these stories, and they're just stories. They're just stories. It's about our tribe, and it's about our team, and it's very faithful Christian men doing their jobs, and I want to help vets that maybe are having problems getting through some tough times, and man, we've all been through it, and I dedicated the book to our children because I hope and pray that it will shine some light on our absence for all those years, and to help them understand. And they may be in their 30s now. My kids are, so
right.
That's they're late 20s, 30s, and I've met some. They're in early 30s, and hey, what did my dad do?
Right.
Yeah. So, and I try to convey that to them and the public, and and to help future warriors, our next generation. Hey, what am I going to get myself into if I want to go? Fly for the 160th, or be a ranger, or be whatever. And
it's important though. It's not being that guy. It's recording history.
Yeah, and Greg, you're absolutely spot on. I mean, unfortunately, if it's not written, it didn't happen. I mean, I remember talking to somebody once about the explorer Magellan, famous explorer. He wasn't the only one to make these huge trans-Pacific sort of expeditions, but he was the one who had a historian with him on his ship.
Smart,
right?
So that was the expedition that got written about.
Yeah,
the original SEAL.
Right on time there.
Yeah, sorry.
So
no, it's okay.
we don't want to keep you too long, but I really.
No, you're fine.
Okay, because there's more to this crash. So it's daytime. The balloon goes up. You're at BIOP. You fly during the day to help out your brothers. And of course, now that you're down, the Air Force is going to do the same, correct? They're coming to get you.
No, they're not. They refuse to come get us. Yeah, Theater Dedicated Combat Search and Rescue, Air Force Special Operations Helicopter. Now, I'm not saying the pilot, I don't know, but the troop commander says, hey, Greg, come here, you need to hear this. They said, we're not coming to get you, it's too risky.
Wow.
And I was like, what? And simultaneously, back at BIOP, so the word gets there, well, they've got every helicopter, every Little Bird, every Black Hawk, and to listen to the guys tell a story is kind of funny. They had woke everybody up, green, red, brown, said it looked like the Clampets. Dudes were hanging off the hell because they were coming to get us.
Yeah.
And I finally got on the radio and I called our talk, and I said, hey, sir, we're secure, okay? Docs, the medic was there, working on us. And I said, I do not want any more helicopters coming in here. Of course, we have a procedure and a process. When that happens, we get fixed wing overhead. We clear an area for, 5 miles or 3 miles, whatever, 10 miles. And to ensure, the safety of those aircraft that are, I know that always really kind of made me angry because I told those guys, let me tell you something. I would have come and got you, man.
Right.
I would have.
Who did
I don't care what they said.
No.
Who did come and get you ultimately?
Well, so I'll kind of go back. So, it was one of the 160 of Blackhawks. We finally got to Ramadi, up to the MSS, up there on the northeast side of Ramadi.
They rode.
That staging area, and yeah, they landed. And
you guys exfilled with the assault with the ground forces all the way back to the MSS. Yeah. The MSS is the mission support site. So ultimately, nobody came and got you until you were back behind the wire
in a secure area.
Yeah. So the boys got you out who were on the ground for that mission.
Pardon?
So it was the boys who were out on the ground for that operation were the ones that pulled you off target.
Oh yes, sir. Yeah. We were. I'd gotten the co-pilot out and I set up in just a bit of a defilade, and I put him in the prone facing north, and I was on the knee facing east for security. And I told him, I said, hey, if you hear something or see something, because we were both pretty jacked up, and I said, just sing out. So let's put both sets of eyes. We'll put both gun barrels on them. He had his rifle. I had my rifle, and we'll assess this before we start shooting at anyone. And about then, a few minutes later, I heard a truck engine, and then I heard the vehicle stop. And then I saw this ball cap, kind of going up and down. Then I saw a face, and I go, oh, that's Chaz. Okay. I said, hey, we're good to go. Okay. Good guys are here. And Chaz came running up to us. But I was talking to him a few months or sometime later. I asked, well, what did you think, when you came running up there? And he's like, man, that helicopter was burnt to the ground and ammo was cooking off. He said, we kind of gave a look to each other when I left that that y'all had perished.
Yeah.
And he said, when I came running over that, and I saw, he says, how did those two Rangers get there so fast? Because we were one north, one, and he was like, because we were in desert, BDUs and looked like everybody else. But he was like, oh, God, that's gravy. Okay, man, let's go. Yeah, he ran up and hugged us, and he asked me, he says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go find that guy and kill him. I said, I at least want to check that building to see if there were any dunnage or if we could get anything to. And the both guys that had seen the shot, every surface to air missile leaves a signature, a smoke trail signature. It's dark gray smoke or white smoke, and they'd seen the corkscrew, and everyone has a signature corkscrew smoke trail, and they said, man, it was a 16, I guarantee you. But they had done forensics on what they scooped up, and they found a small piece of metal that came from an SA-16.
Wow.
That's what got us.
So Chaz says,
I think,
and you say, I want to go get that guy. And so what happens?
Well, we load up, and we got 2 Panders, so it's an armored vehicle, 6-wheel vehicle. We have 3 gun trucks, up-armored Humvee gun trucks. One's got a 50. I jump in the truck with the Sergeant Major and Ranger Smith. He's on dual 240s, and the next gun truck's got a 50. So we assault this build by Amarillo. And I was like, okay, I asked for this, so we're going to go get some. Of course, Doc was poking us and pushing stuff in her throats. So everybody's shooting at these buildings. And I kind of looked to the right, I kind of looked to the left, and I'll age myself, but Dave, you may remember Rat Patrol?
Yeah.
That show. Well, that's the first thing that entered my mind was those crazy Brits and their jeeps in North Africa hunting Germans, and I was like, man, this is kind of cool. It reminds me of the Rat Patrol, So anyway, so we hit the building, and we get 2 of the trucks get stuck in the mud in the middle of this gunfight. So we're suppressing, and the Pander maneuvers. He backs up to one truck, and guy jumps out of the back, with a strap to the Humvee under fire, and pulls that truck out, and then maneuvers over to us and hooks the strap up, and we're suppressing, and pulls us out. We get turned around, we go around, and we attack these buildings in the front. And Ranger Smith had engaged. It was a big tent. There's some guys running around there with AKs, and then we had deployed out. When the truck was stuck, I'd gone to the left corner, and dude came out he had a black man dress on with a phone, and I'm like, okay, this guy's calling his buddies. Hey, the Americans are here, they're stuck. We just shot their helicopter down, so I popped him twice. Some 75 grain love, and then Ranger Smith joined in and engaged with the dual 240s, and then we saw a couple guys running. One had an RPG, one had an AK, so I engaged both of them, and then everybody they were engaging targets of opportunity.
And Greg,
and then we finally got to the building and cleared it, and went on the roof and cleared it. There was nothing there. So we got back in, and we fought our way back out of there, and fought our way through Fallujah, and between Fallujah to Ramadi, and fought our way through Ramadi, and then to the MSF. And we got there at about, it was probably 21:30 hours that night.
And I just want to say that you're no slouch with a long gun either. Like, you're a helicopter pilot, but you're also a 3-gun, competitor, and
yes, sir.
Like you shoot a lot.
Yes, sir. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I was an instructor for BTAC with Kyle after I retired, and that was by far the best post-army job I ever had. I love to train. Yeah. I love to shoot 3-gun, and I shot with the Army Marksmanship Unit for a while. And I got to train with the best shooters in the world, man. So, heck yeah. I love to shoot. I can hold my own pistol, rifle, long gun, AH.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for the people watching and listening, that it's like, okay, here's this, helicopter pilot running alongside, Rangers and Delta, but you know what you're doing. Like, you're not a strap hanger. You're not like,
no, sir.
The attachment at this point. Yeah.
You bet.
How were your injuries at that point, though? How were you able to keep, were you just gutting through it?
Adrenaline.
Yeah.
Yeah, adrenaline's the best drug on the planet, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And I'm pretty sure Doc had wanted to, do something, but I was like, hey, I don't want any morphine or anything like that. I'm good. I just had this terrible headache. When I'd hit the door frame in the crash sequence and it cracked my helmet.
Wow.
I hit it so hard. And, I just had this terrible headache. My head hurt for like 9 months. Finally, it went away. So I had a brain bruise.
So
it's all good.
With the headache and the physical injuries, so you get back to the MSS, they fly you back, or from Ramadi, and they fly you back. Do you keep operating? Is that the end? Like, where do you go from here?
No, they took us both to the cache there in Baghdad, and then cache to back home. Our docs at Fort Campbell wanted us home at Fort Campbell, so they're very protective of us, and so we did that. And then I started the process of getting shoulder. I had both shoulders, worked on both knees. I'd broken a vertebrae in C3, vertebrae L3 through L5. And, so with the docs, I sat down with them, we prioritized and started a plan. So I'd get stuff worked on and take, 30, 60, 45, 60 days then I'd go back to the box. Then I'd go do that for 90 to 100 days. But then I came back and had some more surgeries and I physical therapy, and then I started back flying again and going back flying rotations until I retired. Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. And so we're talking about the physical toll of the job. Is there a mental toll?
Yes. You better believe there is. Hey, fellas, can I take a break for a minute?
Absolutely.
Okay, I have to hit the head.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it,
Go
man.
ahead.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Please.
This isn't live, so.
No, it's not.
We're good.
Yeah, folks. So we'll see if I can try out my editing skills. But if not, this is just a apropos time to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and give us a little thumbs up. Leave some comments down in the description. And there's also the link down in the description to our Patreon page.
Yeah. Also, Greg's book, and we'll talk about it again when he comes back or near the end of the show, but Greg's book right now is out on Amazon Kindle. We'll find out it's not in print on Amazon yet, but I believe it will be. But if you have Amazon Prime, it's free. And he does get paid if you read it or if you thumb all the way through it. And he is donating all the proceeds of the book to different charities.
Nightstalker Foundation. I think it's the foundation for the Delta guys, and then
Three Rangers Foundation. Yes. So please.
We should also point out the book is co-authored with our friend George Hand, and George is a retired Delta Force operator. And if you go back, he was a guest on this show, episode 36. We did like a 2.5 hour interview with him, like real in depth about his career. So he was the co-author of Greg's book that we're talking about today.
Yeah. Guests coming up?
We're going to do a quick video for New Year's. That's just going to lay out some future guests. And then the week after that, January, our first guest in January will be Jeff DePetsy, who is a JTF-2 operator, Canadian Counterterrorism Unit.
Thanks, fellas.
No worries.
I still have that little bird bladder.
So what? Final.
So we were just asking about the mental because I think that for all of us, the job is the job. Everybody loves the job. We wouldn't do anything but the job. But we've had many people on who talk about the consequences of the job, and and what life is like after the job. And you do write about it in your book. And so I was hoping that maybe you could share some of your experiences with us, and maybe not just for the personal part and the history part, but maybe for any other soldiers out there, or any person out there who may be struggling or going through hard times, to hear that they're not alone.
You bet. And that was, that's one of the purposes of this book, is to, if a vet picks it up and reads this, young or old, I don't care, that, that, hey, you're not sharing your pain alone, brother or sister, and you have a network that will help you. And, oh, by the way, God loves you. I'm a very faithful Christian man. That's the only thing that got me through the peaks and valleys, that I went through the last 15 years, so to speak. And I go into great depth and detail in my struggles, in my failures, in my victories. And again, I pray that when a vet reads this, it will flip a switch for him, or it will motivate him to seek help, or go talk to somebody. Go talk to your brothers. Go talk to your pastor. Go talk to a therapist. Been there, done that. I've been in therapy since 2005. And I was, I guess, officially, what's the word? I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2005. So the unit went, the 160th, they went, above and beyond, and we have our own psychs there at the compound and for the unit. And it's to help families, it's to help soldiers, it's to help kids, it's to help everybody. And, I even say in the book, I talk about spouses and kids and family members that, they suffer from PTSD. I mean, dad's gone, special operator, ranger, whatever, and, no communication, worried about him every night for 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever the case. So, but now there is a focus on that family member and that spouse and those kids. But yeah, I hit some, the demons come. I mean, I'd go days and days, no sleep. And, and there's good old Ambien, you get to that wall, you get to that point, and your body has to rest, your mind has to rest. So, alcohol, prescription drugs, did it all, man. And it was all to crush that pain, that pain. So everybody suffers from it. Unfortunately, some of my very close friends have succumbed to that pain and taken their life. I start the book out talking about Leon. He was one of my best friends on the planet, and it just broke my heart to, one, I question, well, how is it that a highly intelligent human being that gets to the pinnacle of a profession and a career and live through all these horrible things,
right,
and then succumb to the demons and the pain and take their life?
Right.
Well, they lose hope. This is my theory, my study that I've done for many years now, but they lose hope and they don't have a loving God. So God got me through these trials and tribulations over the years as I was going through this, and it just sucks. And I went to, in 2013, I went to Carrick Brain Center there in Dallas, and they're a center. It was a 2-week inpatient, and they would take 4 vets at a time, but their expertise was on TBI for football players, traumatic brain injury for football players for years. So they started up a program for vets, and I was fortunate to attend that for 2 weeks. That was a big turning point in my life to, help me mentally and physically. They use a whole man concept, and now though there's so many opportunities for vets, and nothing else. I try to tell several vets every week, hey, I'll call them or text them or whatever and just tell them that I love them.
Yeah.
And that's all they want to hear. That's all they need to hear. And, hey, man, call me. I mean, I've had calls at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, at noon. Hey, I got an empty bottle of Irish whiskey and a load of 45, and I've just had all I can take. Well, no, it's not.
Right.
Let's talk about this for a little bit. And, I've taken vets into my home that were sleeping in their truck and no job. Mama left and kids are gone. Took all their money, and I get it, man. Been there, done that. After 32-year marriage failed, and but God loves you, and we love you, and there's a way out. But you just have to go talk to somebody, and that's what I tell every man that I meet, or even Vietnam vets. I talk to every veteran I can, because that's God's mission for me. That's His purpose for Greg Coker, is go help my brothers and help them get through these tough times. There are good times to be had,
yeah,
and there always will be. But you can't quit. Nightstalkers don't quit, and you just can't give up. And faith. Your faith will get you through this. God loves you, and and your brothers love you, and your parents or whomever. That we need you here.
Yeah, yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, they. What you wrote about, Leon, was because we've all, at this point, I think, lost people close to us.
Yes.
People who just, and it's challenging because from what you wrote about Leon, there was no indication. There was no sign. There was nothing. And that's when it becomes challenging, is when there's that front and there's that, that wall, that shield, that persona. But there's so much going on behind that they just don't let us in on.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I see that a lot in our community.
Yeah.
Is that, there's no signs, there's no symbols, they go and execute. They've made up their mind. And doggone it. And it's, I think I say in a book, I did read some data last year where it's closer to 26 a day now that veterans take their lives. And, in any other country, it'd be an epidemic. We're looking at 10,000 humans that sacrificed and served this great nation and gave up what they gave up. And we're not helping them. We're not doing the job that we need to be doing to help these fellas. And the other thing I saw too that was interesting was that the mean age was 50 years old. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at the Vietnam vets,
right,
taking their lives. So it's just, it'll never go away. And a lot of guys, PTS, and I never did like that. That symbol or that stigma with that. I always felt that it should have been called post-combat stress, because anybody can suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or post-traumatic stress. A rape victim, somebody that's been in a car wreck, somebody that was abused, or, whatever the case, every human's different. And I think to better serve veterans, it should be post-combat stress, because that's what it is.
Right.
And you guys know, especially the op-tempo, which we kept and are still keeping today, 20 years later, throughout the world, is, leadership, and they've done a good job, but we have to stay on top of this stuff. The op-tempo, it just killed us.
Well,
01 to 08.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I've never thought of it that way before, but post-combat stress is very different than post-traumatic stress, in the sense that it's not just the psyche, the traumatic. Like Jack wrote an article on blast injuries and TBI, and how those
good article
to it. And then I also think that there's just the idea that these people who were at the top of the game, the top, and living their dream, and then that ends, and there's nothing like that for them in that life afterwards, and trying to find purpose after that, trying to find meaning after that. And so all those things mix together and create this very, very challenging scenario.
Yeah, they go from being like a Formula One racer to being like a dude with both your legs broken, paralyzed in bed. And that's psychologically traumatic in of itself.
Right.
Yeah. We don't quite, we haven't quite broken the code on, how to help them and how to, seek medical care, or their mental stability to help them advance into a good life for themselves and those that are around them, their loved ones.
Right. Yeah, it's challenging. While you were gone, we were telling everybody that the proceeds of your books, you've been donating them to different charities.
Yes.
And that the book is out on Amazon Kindle right now. When will the book be out in print?
Okay, I just talked to the printer last week, and I will be getting deliveries of the special edition hardback color books 15 January.
All right.
That we're selling. You can go on the website, deathwaitsinthedark.com, and there's about 250 of those left. The first 500 edition, those books, so I numbered the books, and then I designed a coin, a challenge coin, which we all are familiar with.
Sure.
And each coin is numbered to match that book number.
Cool.
So those sold out in 20 days. And I swear, I was like, Lord, if I can just sell 50 books, I'll be good. But boy, they went fast. So I had a couple other, because I wasn't going to do anymore. So I had several people tell me and text me or message me that, hey, I really want one of those hardback books with a coin. I don't care about it being numbered. So I got another 500 of those with a coin.
And they can get those on your site?
Pardon?
They can get those on your site?
Yes, sir. They can go to the website and instructions on how to order. I've been handling all this myself. So
I'm going to go order.
It's pretty easy.
So we put it on our bookshelf.
That's
back
right.
here.
We're
yes.
Yeah.
I'll get you. Well, I had so this is the cover. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep. Looks
That's it. Yeah, the cover, it's a pretty cool story about the color. That's a Rob Wentz print. I don't know if you ever heard of Rob at Wentz Art Gallery. He's a former Black Hawk pilot from the 160.
Oh, really?
And yes. And I mean, this guy, he's phenomenal. But so I called him, and he did the latest. It was probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. He did the latest 6-gun print. So for B Company, that's his print that he did for us for B Company.
That's super cool.
And so we were wargaming the cover. The writing was done. I was like, okay, man, we need to come up with a really cool cover. And I'd thrown some stuff at Geo and a couple other folks. And well, that print's hanging in my office at home. I look at it every day, and I was just like, duh. I'm not the smartest ranger in the troop, but right there it is. So I called Rob and told him, I was like, hey, man, he's writing a book too that's going to be phenomenal. And I said, look, man, I need a cover for my book. And the words didn't even get out of my mouth. And he goes, yes. And he gave me the copyright to that print to use as the book cover.
That's amazing.
So
that's nice of him.
Yeah, it was really, really cool that, here it is again, guy from the community, of course, Geo, being from Delta. And I was just so blessed to have him go on this journey with me that if it had been another editor with no military background or experience, you spend a lot of time explaining things.
Right.
Well, Geo knew it. I mean, he's lived it. He's been there. I was just blessed. And his style of writing is quite entertaining. So, yeah, he's a hoot.
Yeah.
And
I promise
then the way the book cover came together.
I promise you, if you read it, you have not read anything like this book before. And I mean, and I say that in the best way. Like,
and we cover a lot of special operations books around here on this podcast.
It's such a novel and unique tale because we just, I mean, you're really, I think one of the first pilots to really come out and really like, like right there in the cockpit and it was amazing.
Yeah, and I was blessed that Kyle Lamb wrote the introduction for Sergeant Major Lamb wrote the Kyle. I've been good friends for many years, and he's seen the good and the bad with me for those times, and he and Melinda have helped me get through some tough times, and we just because we love each other, and back when he was operating and hiding under a bush, scared like a bunny rabbit, calling for the AAs to come help him. I mean, what can I say? No, don't print that. But yeah, I was just very honored that Kyle did that for me, and yeah, he told me, he's like, dude, I cried when I read this.
Yeah, and
that was powerful. I mean, that was pretty powerful.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for joining us on the show for what will be our Christmas Eve edition of the show. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And we will be back. We'll have a kind of a New Year's message for you guys on the 1st, and then we'll be back live again on the 8th, potentially in studio with Jeff DePatsy.
Yeah. The one disadvantage of having pre-recording this is that we don't have like the audience input, so we're gonna have to have you back on at some point. Maybe not to go through the whole thing, but even if it's a shorter segment, so that people can ask after they watch this, that they can ask the questions that they want to ask you.
Oh, awesome! Well, thank you so much, fellas. It's an honor and a privilege, and I really appreciate you doing this. And
Greg, it's
I just want to help.
Really.
Help some guys.
Yeah, it is our honor. We deeply appreciate you spending your time with us. It means a lot to us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you. God bless you, and have a Merry Christmas.
You too, Greg.
You too.
Stay healthy.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See you.